Hey everybody. So we're back for round two, and today we are going to chat about uh, AI tools. And I'm welcoming Shawn. And here we go.
Hey
Yay.
guys.
Yeah, everything looks good too. Audio is good too.
Okay.
Uh, so go ahead, let's kick it off.
Yeah.
Some of your favorite tools right now for AI for developers?
My favorite tools for AI for developers are definitely Claude. I've been using V0 a ton to create UIs, and that's been like game changing, right? Like you can really create some like highly interactive UI, and the code, while I imagine it's not perfect, it's actually pretty good. And the transition, their UI from transition to showing you something to getting that code in your project is um, really, really cool the way they do it. So
Is
we can, uh,
is that zero?
yeah, that's zero. So like if you create something, if you create a UI in zero and
That's what this was, right? This is what I
yeah,
used for this.
mhm,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So this interface that you created, um, if you switch over to the code version, the code tab, and you should have like there's a little run button right at the top next to the fork.
Or
Um,
add to code base.
yep. If you grab that, you can it will give you a CLI command that you can use to add it to a project. And I think if you change the word add to init, it will create a project and put it in there.
Okay, well, it looks like I can actually just even fork it,
Yep,
and then I can make changes from here.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. So if I go
Yep.
back to the previous, yeah, there it is. I like the animations and the transitions it has too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I thought I gave it more details and you gave it in your prompt, but yours came out better than mine.
Yeah, so huge fan of Claude. Anthropic's doing it right. Yay, Anthropic. But one of the things I've been doing is letting it make decisions. And
Mhm.
because it's been trained on so much, some of the decisions it makes are actually really, really good. Uh, like, let's go back to this real quick. The the icons it had here and the creation of those and being able to tie that into the context, I thought was really, really cool right down
Yeah,
here. And
yeah,
I'll
no, definitely.
go ahead.
I was gonna say definitely. I like the UI decisions.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know, Shawn and I are both uh, basically, I would call us hardcore developers, and we like the low level stuff. We like the functionality over pretty, and then when we get a chance to do pretty, we are like, all right, we understand how to do it. Like our front end skills are great, but we definitely like the functionality over that. I just can't even pretend.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, having something that takes away some of the monotony of doing front end correctly, I think is I'm really excited about that. And over the last couple of weeks, I've just been really like digging into that.
No, that's for sure. So let's go on to the next one that I have a an opinion on, and I think you do too, which is cursor. So
Yep, yep, yep.
go ahead. I'll let you start.
So I feel pretty new to Cursor. I have it on my machine and I've been using it heavily over the last week. I like the amount of people talking about Cursor is just deafening. Like
It's
it's
insane. I don't
insane.
care. I don't care if you're on Instagram. I don't care if you're on X. I don't care if you're on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. You're gonna hear about cursor.
Yep, absolutely. So I finally sat down to use it, like functionally use it. Like I'm currently building a EPK generator for my startup, and we're pretty deep into it. So that it works. I don't love it compared to like Claude, but just using Claude and moving stuff over into to Visual Studio. There are really good things about that I like about it. Like the problem that I have with Claude, I don't have with Cursor. Like if I'm paying attention to what it's doing, like okay, this is the component it's updating. These are the lines it's updating. It's easy to see what is changing inside Cursor. I
Right.
really like that. In Claude, I've had a lot of situations where it will just update something and not be very clear on what changed.
Yeah, and I also think uh, Claude is, and we're gonna get into this, but Claude is for the less technical, and
Yeah,
Cursor is for the more technical. So
absolutely.
Cursor, from like I started playing with Cursor, and I've been using GitHub Copilot in VS Code for probably at least a year now, just to do Python and a bunch of like HTML stuff. And I have gotten so used to using Copilot that coding without it is kind of annoying now. Um,
Hmm.
but I moved to Cursor just because you can't avoid it. And when I moved to it, I was like, this isn't as good as Copilot. It doesn't like I have such a bias towards Copilot
Hmm.
that using Cursor was just irritating to me.
Interesting. So I have not used Copilot, and so I'm gonna have to take your word in comparison.
You should
But
try it. I bet you
yeah.
you're going to have the same problems that I had with
Mhm.
Cursor that you're going to have with Copilot.
Really?
Just
Okay. Yeah.
because
No,
you're used to that interface and I'm used to the Copilot interface and
that
the
that is
changes
what
it does.
that is what I was thinking in distinction, right? Like I feel like, well, let's take a step back. These tools, right? There's a bunch of them, but who are they really for? Right? Like every YouTube thumbnail, Instagram, TikTok video that I see is all about, hey, you who've never created anything ever can now create anything. And the reality is, I
It's
mean,
a
that may
lie.
be, it may be true in the future, but that is not true right this minute, right?
No, for
Like
sure.
I find but it's deceptive because almost.
It's
Almost.
close. No,
Yeah,
it's for
it's
sure.
close.
I watched a demo. I need to find that tweet that was there. This guy had an audio had a mic, and the mic would actually translate into GPT for him. And he
I saw
literally
that.
he
Where
pressed a button and he
he
created a
didn't have a
website.
keyboard. He just had a
Yeah,
mic and a button.
yeah.
That was crazy.
But we all know, is that actually something that could happen? Sure. Did he have it perfectly set up for that demo? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
No.
were somebody who, let's say you're really good at graphic design and you're like, I want to create a website and I heard it's really easy without code now. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case, then you're going to go into one of these AI tools and go, create me a website that does this. And it will get really close and it will run on your machine locally. And then you'll go, great.
Well,
How do I
well,
send this? I know you're going to tell me about that. I know. But how do I send this to a website where people can actually visit it? And this is a nice segue into what Shawn is about to talk about.
yeah, you still have to know how, even local hosts. I mean, we take these things for granted, right?
Right.
Spinning up, first of all, what is it building for you? I mean, beyond what it looks like, what is the actual code? Is it a Next.js project? Is it a Vite project? Like, what type of project is it? And can you get to the command line? Do you know what the command line is? Should you even be touching the command line? Right? So, and what features does your website have? Does it have authentication? Are you using Firebase? Do you know how to set up a Firebase account? Do you know how to set up Firebase rules to not have your whole Firebase account exposed on the internet? I so anyone who's properly motivated can do anything. So there are people who it doesn't matter. They're gonna sit there and kind of methodically go through it. And I think methodical is the word because you have to be very methodical to get results from these tools. These
Yes.
tools are amazing, but if you don't have a recipe, your meal is going to come out terrible. You have to have a plan, and you have and it's circular, right? Like I think Claude and ChatGPT are great at helping you create a plan that you could then follow to accomplish your goal with one of these tools. But again, it does require a level of understanding of things that might not be for everyone.
No, for sure. And I think some of the tools that are out there are a great starting point. And I think um, for engineers, uh, I think they're amazing for bootstrapping a project, like
Yeah,
truly amazing.
yeah. Like I mean, I'm just having these moments like at the startup I'm at where we were in a meeting and she just kind of casually mentioned that she was trying to get an EPK builder. We support entertainers. EPKs are basically like entertainment resumes. She wanted to be able to offer people to generate one. And I just listened to her for like 10 minutes and just sat down and created this UI. And I was like, yeah, I'll have it running in a week. And it's been just under a week and it's almost running.
And
And
what did you use to build that?
So I use V0 to build the UI, and then I use Claude to help me do some of the back end coding because I connected it to Superbase, excuse me, for the back end to store the EPKs. And yeah, those are the two tools. I mean, I started out in Claude coming up with a plan. I told it what I wanted to do, what I wanted to use, and it gave me some feedback. And I was like, okay, cool, that all makes sense. And then I basically started on what I consider to be my current workflow. I start in V0, making the UI, grab the CLI command, and get that into my code base. I with my skills struggle a little bit because there are just some little things that you have to know. I'm not a big Next.js fan. I mean, not a fan. I am a fan. I just don't have a lot of experience. And the way the project is created by default didn't match up directly to what V0's code was expected. So I
Oh,
had to keep
interesting.
working. Yeah, so it was small stuff like your project. Is it source/app? Is it app? Like all of these little standard things that might be slightly different in your code. If you're giving me the CLI and I'm expecting the components to be created, like they're small, but you have to kind of know that. It took me a couple of times to figure out what was going on.
That's pretty, yeah. That's a good point because I think um, a lot of the next steps after
Mm-hmm.
you get things started, and I'll even like go back to WordPress days. So I was a big WordPress guy for years and still do WordPress from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, "Oh, isn't there a plugin for that?" And I was like, "Sure." And then I would give them an amazing plugin and they would be happy with it and they'd be like, "Great. Now can it do dot dot dot?" No, no, no. That's not what the plugin is for. It was
Yep.
designed specifically for this. And it's like, "Oh, but it really should do." I was like, "No, that's not why it's designed." And I think that's true about almost all software development is people will say, "Oh, I just need a quick website." I love
Mm-hmm.
when people tell me that. I was like, "Great, here's a quick website, done." Wait, I need it to say more than hello world. Well, you didn't give me any specifications, right? So then when non-technical people talk to technical people, they get very, very frustrated because we bring out the details that they don't want to think about. Because
Absolutely.
we ask those questions that they're like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." That's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
We know you're not
And
going to think
that's
about,
not changing anytime
well,
soon.
how are you going to support this in multiple languages globally? How are you going to support the GDPR requirements when you actually are hosted in Europe? How are you going to actually maintain ADA compliance for your website? Like, most people don't think about all those things, and that's kind of like what we do by nature of like, we know all the questions to ask.
Yes.
And there is not, I have yet to see a tool that will actually set up a website that is triple A compliant to ADA standards and GDPR compliant for the EU.
No,
There's not an AI tool out there that does the compliance stuff yet.
it's funny.
Yet,
That sounds like a good tool to
right.
work on.
I
But
mean, if
you're
somebody
right.
wants an idea, there's a great one is make sure the website you're creating is AAA compliant or at
You know,
least double A. Like double A standard is pretty common across the world. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on an ADA thing, but I think it's really important.
no, it's very important. And I was gonna bring up a point that I was in class and I was telling my students, I said, you build these apps and you build these things, and if you don't consider these items, there are people that do nothing but sue you. They wait till your thing gets big enough
Yep.
and they sue.
They wait until
So,
you have the budget to be sued.
yeah,
Yep.
and it's just an automatic thing. And once they do, I mean, basically, you're done. Like you have,
You're
like
done.
I've seen like people say I had to pay. It was nothing I could do.
Or, I mean, I think when it comes down to ADA, you're given a 30-day window to be compliant.
Okay, so that's
And
good.
yeah, and they give you an opportunity to fix your code base. So that means you have to rewrite your entire website, fix all of your users and every type of part of your application in 30 days.
Yeah.
So
So
basically, every feature development comes to a screeching halt, and then you make it uh, hopefully under that deadline, or you start losing money on a daily basis.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
So
I have another tool I was gonna pop in regards to this, and this one was a little surprising for me. So it's called GPT Engineer, and I found it from Product Hunt because that's how I find everything now. Because Product Hunt is just it's the Reddit for startup launches.
yep.
It's a dumping ground. Most of it's garbage. Some of it's really good. The thing I liked about this one here, and I'll actually do a real time one. Create a website for a podcast with fun animations and bright colors, and make sure you have a place to play the latest episodes. And it'll actually spin up a preview. It'll give you all of this. This is similar to what you were doing with Claude, right? And
Yep.
Zero with Zero.
Yep.
And what was really cool about Zero is, see, the thing is, it gives you a preview.
Hmm.
So this actually even, oh, this is new. So it does do a preview. There you go. Done.
And that's actually pretty badass. I like the little animation, little bounce animation.
But here's the other thing that's really cool about this one specifically. See this up here?
Yep.
I can actually sync it directly to GitHub and it can be hosted right from GitHub.
Yep. Now that's really, and when you introduced me to this, that's the thing that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Now,
And yes, it uses React, Tailwind, and Vite. So it actually does a full end to end. Yeah,
yep.
so when I did my first one on this, I literally uploaded it to GitHub, cloned it locally, npm install, npm run dev, and I had a working site. And that was amazing. So
Yeah, that sounds like a
like
good experience.
even the hover states, like little things like this.
Yeah.
So I mean, we all know how easy it is to do in CSS, but a
It's
computer but a computer can do it even better, right? And these are the kind of things that I thought were really cool with this one. And I'll just show you this while I have it up. It says full AI tool list by categories. Is it a full list? No, I guarantee there's an AI tool that is not on this list.
well, there were two created today, so
Right, but this is right. I'm sure there's one being created right now. But what's crazy is this has over 500 different tools that you can play with, breaking down by audio generators, AI for business, miscellaneous, etc. It's gotten kind of nuts. Um, but anyway, going back to this, when GPT engineer I saw, and I actually talked to the creator, it's what they call him on Product Hunt. I talked to the guy, And I was like, all right, let me see how good it is. And then I was like, okay, it's not
It's pretty
bad.
good. Pretty
Because
good.
I love when founders are like, and I can promise you all of these crazy things, and then they don't. And they're like, oh, well, that's really hard. Well, yes, that's why
No.
you're a creator.
Yep. Yep. So so this again, the thing that I liked about GPT Engineer is the way it's organized, like just these little silo projects. Like it's I like the chat interface, but this seemed more functional to me. Like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, click on it, get into it, kick it up to your repo, get it down and running. That seemed very fluid to me, versus like being in Claude, copy paste, stuff like that. So I appreciate that. But what the other thing, like Replit agent, um,
You told
and
me
I have,
about that one.
yeah,
I haven't gone into Replit Agent yet.
I paid for it because I was so impressed with the demo. I paid for the year, but I still haven't even gotten to it. I'm like I'm trying to committed to like really trying to learn these tools or come up with a workflow. But like Replit Agent has a very similar thing where everything is like you do all your code and get the app running, and it will spin up a server, an instance with it running, like 1, 2, 3. And I thought that that was really impressive.
Is that what this is?
Yeah,
So this was last week they launched. Wow, this is September
exactly.
16th. This is really new. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's paired programming with an AI.
yeah. It's the same type of experience that you get with Claude, but like again, what makes Replit interesting is the fact that it will host what you build almost immediately.
Oh, that's yeah, that was the next I guess side topic I wanted to cover is great. Everything can spin up on localhost and then the deployment, right? So uh what was it, zero? I think you said zero with Vercel can
Hmm.
actually go all the way to hosting. Is that
Yeah,
an actual true?
it's the for sale side of things, right? Like that's their bread and butter. So, um, what I asked the agent, like, how do I host this, thing I was building? It was, oh, we can, it lists out 5 steps and it was ready to host. So I thought that that was cool.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
yeah, yeah. So I think V0 has like kind of a leg up. I think Replit has a leg up because they have backend specifically to host their stuff that they're building.
You had mentioned earlier Superbase that you've been
Yeah,
using for
super base.
backend.
Yeah,
Tell
so
I've never used it, so tell me about it.
yeah, definitely. So I heard so I do a lot of Flutter Flow. Well, I'm teaching a Flutter Flow class, and I heard someone mention Superbase versus Firebase, which I thought was interesting because Flutter Flow, um, Firebase is like a first class citizen in the dev process. But then when I looked at it, immediately I jumped on the Superbase bandwagon because it's using Postgres.
Oh,
So
so it's
yeah,
relational. It's
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was my first thing. I was like, okay, great. Now I can easily write proper queries and do different things. So that was almost like, oh, done. Like this, I don't really, it's open source. It's basically like Firebase authentication and a bunch of other tools, but it's relational. So that,
Nice.
yeah. So and I've been using it for a week, and I had no experience using it, and I clicked the button, was in there. My APIs were running. I was able to get my, pull an API to get my products out into my app. It took almost no effort.
So as a hardcore SQL Server guy for years, and everyone started jumping on the Mongo and CouchDB database, I would love to
Mhm.
get your thoughts on that
So, I
because I
mean,
know I have mine. Sorry.
the right tool for the right job, right? Like there are times when a MongoDB is good and probably great for using, but you know, I think that implies a level of comfortability that most people don't have. Like they're just following like like a trend or something. Like they don't like people who use Firebase to store stuff probably don't have a real understanding of how it all is working because this stuff is all abstracted, right? Like give me my stuff and it gives it to you. So there's no reason to go any deeper. Once you
Right.
start going deep, like going a few steps beyond, I think there's serious considerations that you have to understand, like how your data, what your data is being used for, how your data is structured, and let that be the real chooser of which platform you're going to use.
Right. And I was arguing with people about performance hits and things like that, and doing, they're like,
Absolutely.
well, you don't have any joins on a Mongo database because you don't need to. You can just query for what you want. And then using GraphQL, you only get the data you want. And I was like,
Exactly. The way that that thing was phrased is the problem. If joins have a purpose. Like the reason why we use joins is to be able to pull these things together very easily. And if when you don't have it, if your data structure is simple, Mongo all the way, document database, dictionary database, they all work. But when you have complex data structures and you need to do these queries, that gets more complicated. And I don't really have time to be fighting something when I know the SQL equivalent. And
right.
and to be honest with you, I've been using this other tool that is called Retool. Again, just a very cool drag and drop like interface builder, but it connects to data directly, so I can connect it directly to my SQL database. It has an AI that helps me write my queries,
Oh,
like help me
wow.
write SQL queries. Like all these complicated joins, I could just talk English to it, and it's building out these queries. It's really good, actually. It's not perfect, but it's really good. And what I love about it is I taught my founder, who's not technical, how to use it. So she can build a query just by saying what she wants in English.
That's nice. Yeah, that would be amazing, especially for database query stuff. Because I remember when I was playing with it, you're like, oh, you got to do common table expressions. Oh, you need a cursor for this, and then you actually do run another command on top of that. And then when you start getting to perf tuning of your indexes and making sure all of that stuff, and then I started using Mongo, and then I realized if you want a document here, you'll actually have that same document 10 times with just an additional field. And
Yep.
well, you don't have to do a join, you just grab the right one, but now your database is going to be 10 times the size it needs to be.
Yeah. I mean,
Normalize your
again,
data.
I think this all goes back to let's crawl back into the top of the stack, right?
Sure.
We are in the golden era of tools, right? When I first learned the code, we were in, I think, I want to get this right, second or third generation of development tools. It still, I mean, I learned COBOL when I was in school, right? So we were like, yeah, it's not really English. It's kind of like English. We have, on the one hand, you had COBOL. On the other hand, we had Visual Basic. But
Tur-
now,
Turbo Pascal.
Turbo Pascal, right? Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely, absolutely. That was the time, right? I was laughing my butt off the other day because somebody took a picture of J plus plus, a box of
Yep.
J plus plus. I actually used that abomination of Java that Microsoft was. Yeah,
Yeah. That
it
was
was a
bad.
very different time. Yeah, but now we live in the golden era. We can talk English and produce code, but
And pretty decent code.
and I don't know if, yeah, like it's not terrible. Like, someone's always gonna, I don't care what level of skills you have, someone's gonna complain about your code. Like it's always gonna be some level of, first of all, there's the religious wars of what libraries and what ESLint, and like it's always gonna be some level of, there's just some religious war about something.
Tabs
But
versus
you can,
spaces.
exactly, right? It's like, but we're at this point where it is possible to build pretty much anything by talking. Um, but I don't remember if it was with you I used this analogy. We are going to become chefs,
Yeah,
right?
that
We
we
were
talked about
mechanics.
that. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. So now we have to learn. One thing that makes chef. I cook a little bit, right? And for a while, people are like, "Well, why don't you join these cooking shows? Why don't you take it to this next level?" I was like, one, I love it, and I don't want to kill it. Two, even the worst chef you've ever seen, it's like NBA. The worst player on the team will mop the floor with everybody.
That's
Like
true.
it you know, even the worst chef you think he still knows more about things than you've ever even thought of. Like I feel like we're going to get to that point where recipe correlate like collection and technique. Like we were already talking about like prompt storage and like I think pretty much anyone can write a prompt, right? But to write a good prompt, to have a library of very useful prompts that you can just drop into the root of your project to give your project structure, to give your AI agent like these are my rules. Follow my rules when you work with me. That's all coming. It's like part chef and part librarian. Like we're going to have to be really good at some of the things that traditional developers are not great at.
No, for sure. And I think we are like you said, we're in that golden age. And I think we have the newcomers learning like everything on AI and learning how to code and losing some of that foundational stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then the traditional, let's just call us that, the traditional engineers,
Sounds better than old.
traditional, you like that? Traditional engineers are just almost in denial of what AI can actually do because they're like, oh, it will never be as good as dot dot dot, and they're wrong, point blank. So
Yeah,
it is one, embrace the progress because it's amazing, and let's move forward with it and expedite what you're doing to get it even better, but also understand that when you refactor or you review or you're maintaining an existing AI code base, and I think that's going to be the new term. So I'll coin it first. Oh no, we work on an AI code base, and I was like, oh okay, so you haven't written a line of code yourself and know nothing. Got it. But
yeah, no,
I think
no. I
that's going
think
to be the future of like engineers like us now is, hey, we have this AI code base and we need to make changes and it's not working. And that's
that's
when
the slippery
that's
slope. That's the slippery slope, right? Like
but that's
you're
what's
gonna
going to happen. It's just I've seen
absolutely,
it happen
absolutely.
so many times. Like when WordPress blew up, I got so many phone calls of like, "Hey, I have this WordPress site." I was like, "I bet you do." And now you're talking to me for no apparent reason. Okay. And I'll go in and I'll write like 3 lines of code and they'll be like, "You're amazing." And I'm like, I fixed your CSS, but yeah, you're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
No,
because they know nothing about the underlying code and they're just like, it just doesn't work.
I think what you're talking about is really interesting because this has a lot to do with the why, more like the who, right? We'll get to the
Yeah,
why,
it's the
but the
who.
who, like at the end of the day, we're still trying to build things for people. Now, granted, I built more things for myself in the last month than I've done in the last 5 years because I can't help myself.
Because it's
But
fun.
yeah, it's fun. It's bringing back some of the fun aspect of what we do. But at the end of the day, we need clients. Like someone has to pay us to do these things. They haven't changed. Like, yes, AI has evolved things, but essentially the clients haven't changed. They still don't understand what they're asking for. It's still your job to kind of shepherd them through these complicated tasks. Again, you need to be methodical. Like you got to have a plan. And I think that there is like a workflow that can be connected that makes this all work. But if you just, first of all, I was having a conversation with a friend, and well, I think this was on Twitter, but it was a friend talking about it. Basically, he just kept talking about something that I always just understood because I saw it coming up as an engineer. Great engineers never touch their keyboard until after they've written a plan. Like
Oh,
I've
that's
like
fair.
yeah, like, and you can always spot them because they have very specific field notebooks. They're very religious about their tools. And while we may think that the computer is the tool, it's really the notebook.
I still have pen and paper ready sitting next to
Exactly.
me.
And as soon as you start describing what you want, they lock in on the problem. Like,
Right.
what's the problem we're solving? Who are we solving it for? Then, slowly it evolves to a thing. That hasn't changed. Like, that still needs to happen.
And that will
And
always be the situation is, hey, I have this beautiful idea for an app. Okay, great. What are you solving?
yep, yep. And again, this is a part that makes customers uncomfortable because one, they don't have the background to fully explain to you what the problem they're solving, and they mistakenly think that whatever problem they have, you are automatically a domain expert, right? You right? That like it's hey, you're a developer, develop it, but
Yeah.
this might not even be your domain. Like, yes, I
Yeah,
can write
no,
code one time.
they'll people will be like, so I have this BlackBerry. I need this new app for my BlackBerry. I was like, I'm sure you do, right? Or, well, I remember I was blessed enough to be able to be part of the Apple Vision Pro launch and built 5 apps for that. But when Apple Vision Pro came out, everyone's like, well, why can you not do this on Apple Vision Pro? Because it's a new operating system and no one knows anything about it yet.
Yep,
And
yep,
that's a great example of, oh, you're a developer, so you should be able to code in 37 different languages on every single platform, and it should be backwards compatible with every mobile device that was ever made.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, these type of challenges haven't changed.
Nope.
But I do believe that there is a workflow empowered by AI that you could use. Like, we went into V0 and started having a conversation, make this UI. Maybe the play should have been go into Claude or ChatGPT and give it enough context to what your ultimate goal is and have it spit out a working outline of what you should do.
Right. And that's something I've been using Claude for recently is
Yep.
coming up with a plan that would actually I would feed back into Claude to actually generate the output of the plan.
I it drives me a little batty, like that side of my brain, the circular nature of it all,
Yeah,
but it does seem to work.
it does. Yeah, recursion. It's
Yep.
basically it's prompt recursion. So you write a
Mm-hmm.
prompt that calls itself to actually generate another prompt that will then feed into a prompt to generate code.
Yeah, no, and that it. I've been watching some YouTube videos and some other people use that technique pretty effectively. And again, it's not the people that go, I can build. I saw a guy say, let's replace Notion. Now, this one guy, he's been like ranting and raving about replacing all the SaaS products that he's using, but the demos that he creates are terrible. Like terrible. I mean, I
Right.
get from the point of view, like he's showing you what's possible, but they're terrible. Like these products, we pay for these products for a reason, right?
No, I
Um,
mean even on the Replit agent, which I just saw, it said
mhm.
you should stop using Zapier and deploy your own Python code. Um, no, you shouldn't. Zapier is amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, you try to find a common module language for adapting to multiple types of other platforms and products. Yeah, that's not going to be a simple thing to do.
No, and then being able to create a real time workflow for non technical people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
it's
this
nuts.
really kind of gets into the product. Like we what I think I mentioned to you last time, like these tools are revealing the product people in us all,
Mhm.
right? Because again, I would argue that it's really not about the code. It's about the product. It's about the why we're building stuff. Because at the when I think of a person who doesn't have a coding background but has a really strong why and has maybe a decent product background, with these tools they can build anything, right?
Now, the product background I think is very critical nowadays, and I think that will lead into the hybrid engineer,
Hmm.
because that hybrid engineer is basically going to be the product idea person, a little bit of the user experience, and a whole lot of the technical, and that'll be a hodgepodge of a single individual. And I remember like 10 years ago, they're like, 50% of the jobs in 10 years don't even exist yet. Well, they're starting to now because it's been about 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because like a prompt engineer job is an actual real thing nowadays. And then
Hmm.
being able to generate user experiences, and then being able to, oh, I'm a product UX engineer. Wait, what is, but I think that's going to be a real title coming
Yeah.
up, because then you could hire that person to do all of it. And with AI tools, it can facilitate all of that in a very, very short time.
Yeah. I mean, even as you were talking, I was thinking through where we currently are, like with V0, like creating this interface. And that doesn't we are just accepting the UX rules and product things that V0 is doing. But imagine when Figma can do the same thing.
Figma's getting better with their prototypes too.
Yeah.
And when you start getting Figma to a point where it actually can do even the subtle animations and the transitions that everyone wants,
Mhm.
and if you
Yep.
could do that in a prototype and then deploy it. The
Yeah.
part the part that like the front end stuff has gotten so easy now because of things like Figma, and then you do an export, and there's even ways to transfer um, code from, I mean, take a Figma and export it straight to HTML.
Yeah. I've used that plugin
It's
actually
actually
to.
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
However, it does not tie to a back end, and you still need an
Oh, absolutely.
engineer to do all of that. And when Figma gets, like, let's say Figma has an integration point with Superbase, and then it has it turns on authentication with toggle switches, and it'll create an admin dashboard for your site on deployment
Hmm.
with role-based security, and that then we're going to be like, all right, we've made it, now we can actually do really fun stuff.
So I feel like you've activated my trap card because I led you down the Figma thing, but as you started going down there, I realized something important, at least worth noting. That's not really Figma's job.
No.
And and we kind of just talked through like what it could do to like be relevant in this AI stuff, and I think that's perfectly right. But when I when I try to explain to students like, okay, the importance of design and UX, Figma comes up, and other tools come up like Balsamic, right? I
Oh,
remember one
I
time,
remember Balsamic. Yeah,
yeah,
it's great.
yeah. I remember one time I was in a very important meeting with AT&T, and the director, he's like, "This looks like my. Why are you showing me this? This looks like my son drew it." Because but remember, Balsamic used to have that
A
hand drawn.
wireframe. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the hand
yeah,
drawn version. It was awesome.
yeah, yeah. But there's science behind why we do that, right? There's science behind why we use low fidelity, medium fidelity, and high fidelity because we want people to focus on the functionality and not design. I feel like it's both, but it's weird because I think in order for Figma to stay relevant, they're going to have to integrate some kind of code generation. But as soon as I came to that realization, I also came to the realization that that's not what that tool is designed to do. And if we do that, and it probably will do that, we have a problem.
Right. Because now you're jumping to the end game without going through the actual process to get to the end game.
There's no science. There's no like, you're going to put functional code in front of users. They're going to have misset expectations. And, you know, I don't care how good the code is, there's still got to be like a 10% margin of like, especially when it comes to design, like what you see in your design doesn't always get translated into your code, which that's the holy war, right? Like I
Right.
always tell people, like I always tell clients, like just expect like a 10% variant, right? Like,
Oh, that's a fair percentage.
yeah. It shouldn't be like, of course, depending who your developers are, because some developers say, yeah, I saw it, I didn't like it. Because I don't have that component already written.
Right. No, I mean, I think you hit on an interesting topic too, because what I did in a 2 minute discussion with you about Figma is I created the thing I hated, which is bloatware, right? So now Figma is going to get so memory intensive and so spread out on its functionality that it's going to lose its focus of what it actually can deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, connecting back to some of the other things that we talked about that's really important. Product is important. Like where we're going, in our daily lives now, it's less about the code and more about the product. Like I tell people this all the time, they always laugh. I say, no one's gonna stick their head up your ass to find your code. Like no, like you could be the greatest developer ever. They're just gonna look at what's on the screen on the surface level and make a determination if it's good or not.
Yeah.
Like no one cares about your code. They only care. Are you solving a problem that they care about? Does it
Right.
feel? I tell people all the time, it's not about. It's an intangible thing. When you look at something, especially mobile, because that's my area. Like mobile, I think is intrinsically like this. People look at something and feel something. Like,
Right.
and that's how they bond to design. They feel something. So if you can make your users feel something for your design, you got them. That's it. That's the whole game.
Yeah, the emotional connection is done. No, it's funny because I have when you're saying no one no one will care about your code, I have a DevOps engineer who is truly talented and amazing and sets up all this monitoring system and all this back end architecture and does it all through Terraform and all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized he's really really talented. But what's so funny is like the I really believe the highlight of his job is when no one actually goes talks to him. Like
Exactly. Everything works.
because the only time people will actually go to him is either A, they need something new, or B, something's broken.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's like, no one's and I have a weekly meeting with him and our architect, and we're like, yeah, no one's bothered us this week. I was like, hey, success.
Because it's good. It's good.
Yeah,
Mm.
cool. What time is it? It's 9:50, 9:48.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to cover? I'll be honest with you, I'm getting a little tired.
Yeah, I mean, we can call it here. I think this is a good place.
Yeah, I really like the Figma bloatware idea. And you're like, is that Figma's job?
Yeah.
No,
It was.
it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
not.
Yep.
So Figma, if you're listening to this or watching this, don't do it.
Don't fall for the trap. Don't fall
Stay
for the trap.
stay focused. You make an
Yeah.
amazing product. Stay with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we talked about a lot of different tools. I will probably add notes to this in the comments
Yeah.
so people will have links of what they can actually go download and check out. But
Also,
yeah,
we'd love to hear what tools you guys are using and what you think about the
yeah,
tools we talked about.
let us know because I know there's a bunch of opinions out there about Cursor and Copilot, so we can start that battle through this. Um, but yeah, I would love to hear your opinions. I will do the typical like, share, subscribe comment because this is week two, so we're getting started. So we'll see how this plays out. But been a lot of fun. Thanks again, Shawn.
All right.
Um, I will see you next week, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. And we'll be back. I'll talk to y'all later.
See
Bye.
you guys. Bye.